the Saints have made their assistant coaches available to the media, and we've gotten a really thorough breakdown of each position group by the coaches who handle those position groups. Well, Darren, Rizzi, and Phil Galiano are the special teams coordinator, assistant special teams coordinator, and they went through quite a bit of the Saints special teams outlook. Now, it's worth noting that not a lot's going to change for New Orleans, right? Especially when you talk about the specialists. Thomas Morstead's back. Check. One of the best punters in the league. You gave Will Lutz the richest contract for a kicker. Check. You're good there. Deonte Harris was an all-pro as a rookie returner. He's back. Check. So you're not going to see a ton of change. I think mostly the question is, with some of the newcomers, how might they get involved to elevate what you're doing on special teams? And there's a couple of very obvious guys to mention, and they are Ty Montgomery and Tommy Stevens. Of course, Tommy Stevens was drafted in the Taysom Hill role mindset. And my feeling on this, and a lot of you have disagreed, and that's okay, but I think Tommy Stevens has an uphill climb to make this team. It's impossible for me to imagine the Saints keeping 4 quarterbacks. It's just not going to happen. So Tommy Stevens, and you know Breeze is making the team, you know Jameis is making the team, and you know Taysom's making the team. Those 3 are on the roster. And Taysom's on because he can do so many things. So Tommy Stevens has to be Taysom Hill. He's got to show you that he's going to add things to your offense and special teams because he ain't playing quarterback. And my feeling is, if I had to guess today, Tommy Stevens is not going to make this team. He's going to get cut, and they're going to sign him to the practice squad because I don't know that there's another team in the NFL that's going to use a spot in their 53 for Tommy Stevens. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm sure there were a lot of people in Green Bay who thought nobody was going to pick up Taysom Hill. But Sean Payton had a vision for him. And maybe because Sean Payton has shown everybody the vision of what he did with Taysom Hill, there will be copycats that might try to do the same thing with Tommy Stevens. Maybe. Could certainly look at Carolina and say that would make a lot of sense, right? With being that Carolina wanted Tommy Stevens, that Joe Brady is there now, and Brady is largely credited for the Taysom Hill package in New Orleans. But if Tommy Stevens is going to make this team, he's going to have to be a key impact guy on every special teams unit. Here was Phil Galiano talking about the potential for Tommy Stevens on special teams.
I was fortunate enough to get to coach Tommy when he was at Penn State and I was there. And at that time, he was competing to be the starting quarterback. So unfortunately, I didn't get to use him on special teams at that point. But he was always a guy that, he's big, he's fast, he's physical, he's super smart, he's super tough, that I always knew could play special teams for us. And, he's an extremely hard worker, and he fits everything that we want here. So we're really excited, and I'm excited, to be able to get to work with him, have Riz work with him.
That tie with Phil Galiano working with Tommy Stevens at Penn State is very telling. He knows the athlete, he knows the kid, he knows the player, he knows the person. All of that is a big boost for Tommy Stevens going to camp. But the other thing he said there is, look, I knew at Penn State I wasn't going to get to work with him because he was going to be the starting quarterback. He ain't going to be the starting quarterback in New Orleans. I think we all know that. So he's going to get to sort of mold that clay a little bit to see what Tommy Stevens' role may be. I don't know what it is, but if Stevens can emerge in the same way athletically that Taysom Hill did, if he can come off the edge and block punts, if he can be a guy that's your personal protector, and it allows you to relieve some of the stress off of Taysom, especially let me say that another way, relieve some of the risk from Taysom, especially if you think he's got a chance to be your heir apparent starting quarterback. The last thing in the world you want from Taysom Hill is getting blown up as a personal protector and dislocating a shoulder, and that's something that affects him from being a quarterback or affecting your offense moving forward. Can Tommy Stevens do those things, and is it valuable enough to have him on the roster? The other guy that we've talked about a ton, and this offseason, I have been bullish about the importance of the Saints adding this guy, is Ty Montgomery. And it's because he's a guy that is tailor-made for what Sean Payton wants to do. We've talked about him a bunch when we talked about the running backs. We've talked about him when we talked about the receivers. But from his time in Stanford and his time in the NFL, Ty Montgomery has also been a returner. Now, the Saints have Deonte Harris. So where does Ty Montgomery potentially fit in? Even if it's just as in a backup role potentially, Here was Darren Rizzi talking about Montgomery's role in special teams.
He's a guy that does a lot of different things. He's a guy that not only, I think he probably gets noticed mostly as a returner, but he's actually done a lot of different things. He's played on the punt team. He's played personal protector. He's played wing. He's played in other spots in the punt return game other than returner. He's been on the kickoff team. So here's a guy that's got a lot of value. I think I speak for every special teams coach when I tell you that you're always looking for offensive skill guys that can bring value to the special teams core positions, not necessarily the returner, but you're always looking for offensive skill guys that can bring value. And so having watched him in college and having watched him now for a few years in the NFL, I'm really excited to work with him.
Offensive skill guys that can bring value to the core special teams positions, not just as a returner. And you heard him say there, he's been on the punt team, he's been on the kickoff team. Like, that's a guy that is down there covering punts and covering kickoffs. And he is going to – anyone who's curious as to whether or not Ty Montgomery is going to make this team, don't be. He's going to make this team. And I think he's going to have a big impact for this team in 2020. I will be fallout shocked if Ty Montgomery doesn't make the team. I think he's going to have he is going to have – it may not be reflected on the stat sheet because he may not get 100 targets this year and he may not get 100 carries this year. But I think his impact is going to be felt on this roster. And he's going to flash. There's going to be a couple of plays a game where you go, man, I'm glad 88's on the field. One more, Rizzi also talked about what's the next step for Deonte Harris, who, when you're an all-pro as a rookie, what do you do for an encore?
I say this all the time. I think people look at me like I'm crazy, but I think Deonte can actually really improve a lot. I think people just automatically look at the numbers and look at his accolades and look at the, all-pro and Pro Bowl and all that and automatically assume that this guy's got it figured out. I think Deonte would probably be the first guy to tell you that he's got, enough things to work on. If you look back at last season, we got off to a slow start in the return game in both punt and kick. Some of that was growing pains with Deonte. He made some bad decisions early on. Ball security wasn't great. He made some bad decisions in terms of when to field the ball, when not to field the ball. And so I think those are things he got better at as the year went on. But I certainly think he's not a finished product yet. And so I think he can actually really make some more strides in refining his return game. What I mean by that is just kind of getting better at the little things. There's just some of the decision-making, the ball security, some of the calls. We have some calls that the returner makes sometimes. Things like that, I think he can really improve on. And I think you saw that because he obviously was trending big time, up at the end of the season. So hopefully we can kind of just pick up where we left off.
The thing that I would be most concerned with a rookie coming from a place like Assumption College is the stage too big. That's just, for me, the biggest question. And clearly the stage for Deonte Harris was not too big. Now can you refine it? All the nuances that you heard Rizzi talk about there. Ball security, a couple of things with protection. Like, that's when you start to refine the little details, and that's when you go from being great to being special. And I'm not making that prediction for Deonte Harris. It's 1 year. As quickly as he ascended, it could fall apart. And that's why a lot of people have sophomore slumps. They have a lot of success early, and they stop doing the things they did that got them the success they had. I'm not saying that's going to be the case with Deonte Harris, but I do agree with Darren Rizzi where you could say, man, there's a ton of potential there, but there's also a lot of room to improve as well. So good stuff there, talking special teams. It's been such a focus during the Sean Payton era, having great special teams. And there's no reason to think why that won't carry over again this year and potentially be one of the reasons why the Saints end up in Tampa for the Super Bowl. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.